We're live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Cree, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Mr. Robert Hutchings. I'll be chairing the hearing today. I'm joined on the panel by Mr. Kevin Stephenson and Ms. Valerie Wern. And our secretary today is Mrs. Crystal Harland, and our assessor is Mrs. Idarkanova, representing the City Winnipeg Assessment Department. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony following questioning by the applicant and the panel members, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions by the assessor and the panel members. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions based on the evidence presented here today. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing item number 3 on our docket today. Mrs. Harlan, please affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Madam Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Alyssa Aderhanova.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Tara Cates.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. Welcome to both parties. Our first item on docket is item number 3, file number 24-1788, roll number 12015327000. Address is 819 Grant Avenue, and we're dealing with a 2025 realty assessment appeal to the assessor. When you are ready. Sorry, this one is taking a while. Okay, when you are ready to proceed, 819 Grant Avenue.
Roll year is 2025 with a reference date being April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $1,777,000. This is an institutional property that is taxable school exempt. The apartment has one building on site, which is 2 stories. The actual year built and effective year built are both 1964. We have a discrepancy in the number of suites. So when we jump to page 3, I believe, we'll see that there's actually 23 units that are going towards the model. And we have an outdoor parking stall count of 7. Going to page 3, we can see the unit breakdown in the income value summary. So we have 4 bachelor units and 19 one-bedrooms, totaling the 23 units. And the average monthly rent per unit is $734. Looking at the model-derived assessment, we can see that we have a gross potential rent of $202,728. We've applied a 3.2% vacancy rate, and the effective gross income is $196,241. The expense rate applied here is 53.82%, and the net operating income is $90,624. We've applied a cap rate of 5.10%, and that leads us to the estimated market value of $1,777,000, and our market value per suite is $77,260. Going to page 4, we have a rent comparable table. So we can see that all comparables are apartments. They vary between 2 and 3 stories, all have 1 building on site. The range for the comparables is from 1953 to 1972. We have a mix between masonry and wood construction class. The suite breakdown for comparable 1 is 6 bachelors, 8 one-bedrooms. Comparable 2, we have 4 bachelors, 4 one-bedrooms. Comparable 3, we have 1 bachelor, 16 one-bedrooms, 6 two-bedrooms. Comparable 4, we have 1 bachelor, 10 one-bedrooms. The subject has a gross floor area per square feet of 995. The comparables range from 700 to 941 square feet. So the subject is larger than that range. The average monthly rent per unit for the comparables ranges from $770 to $966. Going to page 5, we can see some online information for the subject property featuring, with their features being bus route, restaurants nearby, so good location near Grand Park Shopping Center. And we can see that the property offers a weekly shuttle to the grocer and that they have the water, hydro, and heat included. Going to page 6, we can see October 2022 CMHC private apartment average rents. So in the first image, we can see that it's based off of the Fort Rouge zone. And we can see the weighted average and per unit. On the bottom half of the page, it's based on the year of construction. So for the subject being 1964. Going to page 7. The table above is based on the structure size, so the 23 units. And we can see the weighted average on the bottom right of that table. And then looking at the bottom hand capture for combined averages. The CMHC zone, year, and building unit count averages to 981.26. And looking at our modeled rent, we're 74.85% of the CMHC. Going on page 8, we can see just overall information for the CMHC October 22 market rents. Page 9, we have capitalization rate evidence. The following is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject. Net operating income has been developed through stabilizing owner-reported income and expense information. Capitalization rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. And we can see here in the table that we have a range from 3.46 to 5.74 cap. Subject being 5.10 falls within that range. Going to page 10, we have some more cap rate evidence. So we can see in the multifamily City of Winnipeg, the 20th to 80th percentile ranges from 4.75 to 5.45 cap. And again, subject cap falls within that range, as well as the low rise seen in the secondary broker reports for Colliers, Cushman Wakefield. Page 11 is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 12 shows the subject in overview on the upper hand image in the purple rectangle, as well as a map view highlighting the Fort Rouge neighborhood and overall good location of the apartment. Page 13, we can see the Google Street View image from May 2023. So there's a bus stop right out front. And page 14 would be some more online information as for the subject property. So considering that the on page 3, market value per suite is only 77,260. In my opinion, this seems very well supported by the model, considering that the subject isn't operating on a for-profit basis, and we're only at 74.85% of the CMHC market rents. That would conclude my presentation. I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you to the assessor. Ms. Cates, any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
Yes, a few. Thank you. So starting on your page 1 with the parking, only having 7 parking stalls, would you agree that that may be seen as a negative to the market?
In a sense, but I think a lot of tenants would not necessarily have a vehicle and would rely on the busing services that are available. And as we saw in page on the Google Street View page, let's see where that was. Page 13, we can see that there's a bus stop right outside of the property, and as well, not all of the tenants may even own a vehicle. So in a sense, it could be perceived that way.
Okay, but you would be referring to the current tenants, right? But if we were looking at this on a market perspective, if a for-profit purchaser was purchasing the property, would you agree that one-to-one parking at a minimum would be seen as more desirable?
That would be the ideal situation, but I don't think that necessarily takes away from the fact that not every tenant is going to have a vehicle.
Okay. Going to page 3, with your income value summary, had you considered any adjustment to the expenses based on your review of the financials?
I believe that an expense rate of 53.82% is more than reasonable, as that's what we've been seeing in market, and even, I guess, looking from your Altus cap rate study, the expense ratio that I guess you guys have presented at a max there is 48.40%. So I think that an expense rate of 53.82% very well seems reasonable of the market.
Typically, when you're doing a stabilization at the department, if the actual expenses were higher, then you would use those, would you not?
I have not reviewed the expenses as this is not an the subject doesn't operate on a typical for-profit basis. And
Right,
we're
so that would affect
already
the,
at 74.85% of the CMHC average rents.
Mhm. But that would affect the rents, but what about the expenses would be not typical of market?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into that.
Ms.
That's not
Cates,
information I have
Ms.
presented.
Cates, in all fairness, the assessor hasn't entered the income and expense statement in her, unless I'm missing it, I can't find an income and expense statement submitted by the assessor.
Okay, no, that's fair. I just thought that they were
Okay.
submitted, so I figured it was fair game, but I'll move
Yeah.
along. I just have a couple more.
Okay, of course. Yeah.
So in regard to the income value summary, would the model be valuing this property as if it were a lower end rental in the market apartment category, or is it valuing it like it's social housing?
I wouldn't be too sure, as I guess I think it would be valuing it as per normal.
And then just in regard to your CMHC tables on page 6 and 7, given that the property is social housing and it would have lower end finishes than what's in the market, it would make sense to be at 75% of CMHC, considering CMHC is considering newer developments, renovated developments, things like that. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a fair statement.
That would conclude my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cates. Mr. Stephenson, any questions of the assessor?
You said you didn't know why there was a discrepancy in units, 23 to 22?
No, I don't know.
No. So I'm assuming you didn't ever inspected the property?
I have not inspected the
Are all
property.
these figures model driven?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Warehun, any questions of the assessor?
Mine were just answered, thank you.
Thank you. To the assessor, I'm looking at page 13. Following up on Ms. Cates' questioning, how many parking spots do you see here? If you look at the parking blocks, you're saying 7.
I have not personally counted from the image, but 7 is what we have
Yeah,
on record.
I think I'm counting 10 or 11. I think that's what I'm counting anyway. So not obviously enough to supply a vehicle for every parking lot. But anyway, it seems to me that might be off a little bit. Then on page 14, please, this is SAM management summary. I guess this is as close as we get to an income and expense statement. So they state a third of the way down the rents that they're charging. Studio and then a bachelor deluxe, 1 bedroom standard, 1 bedroom. So there's a mix of rents that they're charging. It does say that the rents are not subsidized. Would you agree with that?
It does say that, correct?
Yeah, okay. And it includes the utilities. And they're stating that there is I guess it looked like wall air conditioning in each unit. Would that be accurate, do you think?
I think it would be accurate.
I'm looking on page 13, the physical or the rear of the property, I guess it is. Yeah. Okay. All right, that is all my questions. Thank you. Miss Kate, bear with us 1 second, please. 819 Grant Avenue, Miss Cates, when you are ready, please.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, we have a summary of some of the property details along with our requested assessment of $1,234,000. On page 6, we have our property site maps. So an aerial map view and then a Google map view, and then an exterior photo and a pictometry view on page 7. Property description on page 8. So the subject is on the northwest corner of Grant and Lilac in the Earl Grey area. It was built in the mid-60s. We have noted 22 units from the owner records, 16 bachelors, 6 one-bedrooms, and then 12 surface parking stalls from those owner records. So a bit more than 7, but still only about half for the property. If you follow me to page 13, we have the overview of our income approach. So the property is subsidized seniors housing. The income, as we'll see when we get to the stabilization, is not at market. Since we know that the city is taking a proportion of CMHC rents, we're not disputing those rents at $202,728 or $768 per unit. Typically, when you have properties that were built as subsidized housing, the finishes are more utility grade than what we'd see in the market. And at times the units can also be smaller. So the lower end finishes would contribute to the rents being below CMHC rents. Since CMHC is only averages, we don't know the starting and ending values, and they are pulled up by nicer developments in the location. So we're applying a market vacancy of 3.2%. And for the expenses, we've stabilized 3 years, and we're applying an expense allowance of $122,184 or 62.3% of effective gross income. When we're looking at the financials of these properties, while the rents are not at market, the expenses are what they are in terms of if this was operating. If this was purchased by a nonprofit, there would still be the cost of utilities, taxes, things like that. So on page 14 and 15, we have an overview of our methodology for cap rates for social housing. So guided by the Appraisal Institute text, we start at a market cap rate and adjust upwards for risk factors. We do that because these properties don't really transact in the market. And when they do, they tend to have a lot of atypical conditions associated. So you can't form cap rates out of those. And we have some discussion of factors that we might consider for adjustment. The main one being low income tenancy. So on page 16 and 17, we have a discussion of that. And the idea is that low income tenancy is linked to deferred maintenance at these properties because they don't earn enough operating revenues to cover their operating expenses, and they rely on funding to fill those gaps. And what we see in these properties is that over time, the issues build up and they tend to get more severe. So when we're looking at a property built in the mid-60s, there would be significant deferred maintenance there. On page 18, we have our cap rate for the subject property. So our base cap rate for a property of this age group would be 5.75, and we've applied a 6% cap rate to the subject property, considering an adjustment that it is subsidized housing. The condition is not going to be in top tier condition. I'm assuming it's somewhere on the scale of below average. On page 20, we have our stabilization. So we are using an undisputed effective gross income of $196,241. Expenses of $122,184 for a net operating income of $74,056 with a 6% cap rate gives an indicated value of $1,234,000. We have some R&M information on page 21. So the R&M at the property would be low. 1,100 a suite would be pretty low, but it's to be expected when they rely on funding to fix things up at the property. So typically for a market apartment, we might expect to see repair and maintenance in the range of $1,500 a unit at average, maybe $1,800 or higher for a really well-maintained property. Then our appendix starts on page 23. And I've just included the financials that we've reviewed and then just some background information on cap rates for social housing. I've also included our standalone cap rate study in terms of how we derive our base cap rates. And essentially in that study, we go through market information and then we have also calculated some of our own cap rates, and that is there for your review. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cates. Does the assessor have any questions of the applicant's evidence presented?
No questions, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Wern, any questions of the applicant?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stephenson, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cates, have you inspected this property or have any recent inspection reports?
I have not.
Okay. Would you know how big the suites are?
I wouldn't know exactly how big the suites are. There wasn't any information based on that. I would assume in this property that the gross floor area per unit might be a good metric because I don't imagine this property has a ton of common area.
Yeah. Okay. Would you mind providing that? I guess we've got 4 bachelors, right? Or is it 6?
Well,
Would
when I
you-
was looking at the owner records, we had on our files indicated 16 bachelors and 6 one-bedrooms.
Oh, okay. 16 bachelor. I guess that differs from the assessor, right? I believe. Would you mind calculating per square foot? I know it's approximate sizing, but
In terms of the gross floor area?
yeah,
unit?
divided by the number of units.
So the gross floor area divided by our units, I have 22. It would be about 1,039.
Oh. Possibly smaller for the bachelors, I suppose.
And there is some basement area in there. So let's see.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's skewing it, I'm sure.
Basement, it would be about 917.
Okay, so 800 to 900 square feet would probably be an estimate, or 750 to high 8s, maybe, probably.
That would be fair.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. That is my only question. Does the assessor have requirement for summary?
No summary, but I do have cap rebuttal.
Oh, okay. And Ms. Cates, you would want to submit your Altus cap rate study, is that correct?
Yeah, I'll go through my rebuttal briefly as well if we're doing rebuttal.
Okay. So, Mrs. Harlan, do we have the assessor's rebuttal on the brief?
Yes, we do. I'll put both the assessors and the applicant's rebuttal in your OneDrive folder, and then I will send each person the correct rebuttal. If you just give me a moment, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll allow us time to refresh and pull it up, and we'll make sure everybody has each other's rebuttal plus the panel members.
Okay, they're just uploading to your OneDrive now.
Okay,
So please tell me if you can't find them.
okay.
And I've just finished sending the rebuttal to the applicant and the assessor.
Okay, I have both rebuttals. Mr. Stephenson, do you have it? Have them? Miss Warren, okay. And the assessors have received each other's rebuttal?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, the assessor first, please allow us to open your rebuttal before you proceed. Okay. I guess, in fairness to the applicant, you didn't present your Altus rate cut study. Would you like to do a, a light briefing of it so that we can have something to see what the assessor is rebutting?
I guess essentially our cap rate study, we've gone through market information, looked at what the brokers are saying for cap rates, then based on information that we've had access to either through purchaser interviews, publicly available information, we have gone and stabilized cap rates. So we have a range there, and all the background documents and the stabilizations are in the cap rate study for review. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And I believe the assessor, I'm just looking at her rebuttal, is rebutting some of the calculations for individual properties in your cap rate study. Is that right, to the assessor?
Correct.
Okay, if you'd like to go through that, please.
So from the City of Winnipeg rebuttal to Altus 2025 cap rate sales analysis from their page 12, we see their table of sales, and looking at the sales for addresses 345 Talbot, 677 Maryland Street, 738 St. Mary's Road, 100 Maryland Street, and 2390 McPhillips Street. It's of our opinion that for sales 1 to 3, 1 year of income and expense information is insufficient to calculate a stabilized net operating income and would therefore be unusable. For sale number 4, no actual income and expenses are involved in the calculation of net operating income and would therefore also be unusable. And sale number 5, potential gross income utilized by Altus is not based on historically reported information, and in our opinion would be incorrectly stabilized. So looking at page 2, 4345 Talbot Avenue, we can see here that there's only 1 year of income and expense information, and that the Altus calculation of average rent levels are inconsistent with rents reported in the prior year. Going to page 4, 6777 Maryland Street, we can see that there's again 1 year of income and expense information presented, and that the average rent levels are inconsistent with rents reported in the prior year. Going to page 6 for 738 St. Mary's Road, we can see that there's again only 1 year of income and expenses presented here, and that would be insufficient information for determining a cap rate in our opinion, and that the Altus calculation of average rent levels are inconsistent with rents reported in the prior year. Going to page 9, looking at 100 Maryland Street, we can see that there's no actual data presented historically. And going to page 10, we can see for 2390 McPhillips Street, Altus's stabilization, and with average rent levels being inconsistent with the rents reported in the prior year. And on page 11, we can see the City of Winnipeg stabilization for 2390 McPhillips Street and how we would come to a capitalization rate of 4.71%, whereas Altus has come to the capitalization rate of 5.59% for 2390 McPhillips Street. That would conclude my rebuttal. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, any questions, comments regarding that rebuttal?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Werhun, any questions, comments?
No. None, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stephenson?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions either. Ms. Cates, we will go to your rebuttal. Let us get to that presentation, please. Ms. Cates, when you are ready, please.
Thank you. So if you go to page 4, at the top, we start with 727 Sargent and 241 Young. These are unusually low cap rates. These would not be typical of the Winnipeg market in terms of cap rates we would expect to see for multifamily. And typically when we see cap rates below 4.5%, it's indicating that the purchaser was purchasing a different income opportunity, not necessarily the one in place. And since we don't have the income approach for these sales or the backup data, it's hard to verify those. And then in terms of the remainder of the cap rates, we've taken a look at market information. We've been able to interview certain purchasers to understand their assumptions in purchasing. And based on that, we've been able to restabilize some cap rates. So 459 Sargent, we've restabilized at 5.79%. On page 7, 150 Hendon, the city has that at a 4.01% based on interview with the purchaser. We've been able to restabilize at 5.42%, which would make more sense given the age and type. And then if you follow me to page 22, 677 Maryland, the city is using the older sale. There was another sale right at the reference date. That would be more accurate to use. And I'll leave the rebuttal there. All the backup documents are included in that for your review. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the assessor have any questions of the applicant's rebuttal?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Stephenson, any questions to the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Werhun, any questions?
None, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions either. That completes the rebuttal by both parties. Does the assessor have any requirement for summary?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Cates?
I'm good as well. Thank you.
Okay. That would conclude item number 3. 819 Grant Avenue. We have heard all the items scheduled on the docket today, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you to both parties for appearing, and you'll hear from us as soon as possible.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Mr. Chair, I will go take us offline and be right back.
Thank you, Mrs. Harland.
You're welcome.